In this exercise now we are going to analyze zeek logs that were generated based on the PCAP that we have available. So first let's get the files on our system. We need to go onto our file share, network traffic analysis, and there's a folder that includes a number of different types of zeek logs. So let's just copy the zeek folder and put it into our cases. And here we can see there's zeek. And let's just get started and warmed up with what those zeek logs actually look like before we start some more advanced parsing. You can see those logs are structured by different types of naming. So there's an analyzer log, a con.log, DHCP log, DNS log, files, HTTP, some of the highlights you can see here, some of the more interesting ones probably. Some of them have different sizes, so you can already assume that some are more interesting than others. But in our case, first of all, let's just look at some of the more interesting ones. For example, con.log, which captures connections. And you can open this up in any kind of text editor. I prefer Visual Studio Code. Let's familiarize ourselves with what we are looking at here. So once you start this up, the headers are as follows. Here's the datasets. And here we have the fields that are describing the different columns, the different values that you see below. So first of all, the fields are TS, that stands for timestamp. So here we have timestamps since epoch. Then we have UID, which is a unique identifier for each of these entries. Then we have ID origin _H, that is the IP address. Then we have origin _P, which is the IP, and then the followed by the port. And then you can see there is ID response _H, which is the response IP. Then we have the port, and then proto is basically the protocol was being used, which is TCP. And then a number of additional information such as service. Down here you can see that means SSL was being used, for example, or DNS. And then following by the bytes that were originally sent, responded, received, and so on, connection state. So there's a lot of details that you can find out here about this particular traffic, but these are obviously the more interesting ones, the common ones in the beginning. So you can also see below there's the types of fields. You can see some are strings, type address, some are type ports, enum, as well as additional field data types that are being used here. But overall, this is already something we can probably start parsing out just using this text editor. We can probably filter through this if we already know what we are looking for. And you can see all the traffic here is basically generated by either the 11 or the .10 address. And we have, let's see, how many entries? About a little over 10,000. So something we probably have to filter through. And that is possible through this text editor, but we also have hopefully some command line skills that we can apply to be a little bit more effective as well. So this is why we also need to now open up our Ubuntu Windows subsystem for Linux down here. And there is tools that we can use to parse those text files as well. So first we need to go to the location of the zeek folder. For this, we need to go to mount. So once we are in our zeek folder, you can see the text files, the log files actually. And of course, we can now apply some command line tools, for example, grep, to extract information that we're looking for. However, there's also a specific utility that comes with zeek that allows us to parse the information in an easier way. And this is zeek-cut. To use zeek-cut, one of the simple commands is, for example, just use cat to print a log. In this case, let's just use HTTP. And then we need to pipe it through the tool, which is zeek-cut. And then just say, what do we want to show? And this tool allows us to define what we want to show by the header name. And that's pretty convenient. So in this case, we definitely want to see, let's say, the timestamp. And the timestamp is just called TS, as we can see here. And then in order to print the timestamp in UTC time, before this timestamp, we can add a -u and then just add some headers that we want to see exactly by the name as they appear in the fields. So id.orig_h, for example, and then id response_h, and then maybe id response port. And this is going to just print us the list of HTTP entries with source IP, destination IP, and destination port. This would be a lot, so let's just say pipe it to less. And here we have our list. Let's make it full screen so it's a little easier to read. So here we have our list. Here we have the parse timestamp in UTC. We have the source and we have the destination. And if we just hit space, we can see we have some traffic to external IP addresses, port 80, and then it's starting on port 8000, and then things are starting at port 9000 and so on. So it's becoming already quite interesting here by just hitting the space. So this is the way how generally to use Zeek. Now let's get started with some of the more targeted searches.